All right, we will get started with the discussion session. Manager Miguel, would you mind reviewing the agenda for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight's agenda, we have a presentation of a Lifesaver Award by Chief David Turkle from MERTS. We are scheduled, or were scheduled, to have a public hearing in consideration to enact an ordinance amending the park and traffic rules regarding e-bikes and adding definitions. We are removing that item from the agenda. President Siegler will go into more detail at the regular meeting. We have the introduction, public hearing, and consideration of an ordinance authorizing general obligation bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $6 million. Those are primarily for recreation and a library project. Consideration to enact an ordinance to amend Chapter 20 of the Municipal Code to define smoke shops, permit them as conditional uses in the C2 district, and establish use-specific regulations. We've talked about this in several commission meetings before this evening. We have the consideration to appoint an independent auditor. This is for the purpose of our annual audit. We have the consideration of bids for the 2026-2029 sidewalk snow and ice removal service. This is a service from our contractor for municipally owned properties. We have the consideration of a lot consolidation plan for 716 and 720 Gypsy Lane. We have the consideration of appointments of 2 students to serve as our next junior commissioners. And then finally, we have the consideration of the commencement of pension benefits for Marina Nielsen, who was a library employee.
Thank you very much. All right, we will review boards and authorities. Commissioner Flynn, any updates?
I do not have any updates. Our village board meeting is upcoming.
Excellent.
I don't have anything either, because I missed library and MRTSA last week when I was on vacation, and finance was canceled.
Okay.
Got nothing.
Yeah, and Civic Engagement Board, same thing. They're gonna be looking at the comprehensive plan and just seeing if there's additional things they can be involved in. And then there was no meeting for outreach, and we're gonna have the partnership, who's gonna talk about what they're up to. So that's it.
Excellent. We had a very, sorry.
Summertime.
Yeah.
Well, at Resiliency, we didn't take the summer off. So I had a great meeting where we, all the subcommittees had come back to the full board and a discussion about future plans. And so Economic Development Subcommittee wants to continue to consider the property maintenance ordinance codes and see if there's anything more that can be done there or how that's working. But as we can see from walking through Uptown, it's working quite well and lots being done. Yep. Activate streets, again, what more can be done? We've done a lot in recent years. Is there more that can happen? Conversation around right-sizing Washington Road and whether or not that's something that the committee can assist in. Pedestrian safety, advocating for use existing and recently developed design guidelines, which I imagine we might hear more about today. And then increased bike racks. We created a new committee called Civic Wellness, and pretty excited about what the committee is discussing, but kind of realized that there's a bit of gap between all the different boards. And so that committee wants to focus on enhancing social health and wellness by making sure we connect residents with the existing community organizations and encourage residents to explore more social opportunities. So are people connected in the neighborhood? How can we help people get better connection? We're living in a time where there's a lot of isolation and issues regarding that. And as much as I think that we think our community is the most social and everybody knows one another, I think that we probably find that maybe those statistics aren't as good as we'd like. So what can we do to make sure that people feel like they are supported, that they have friends and relationships around the community? And then Sustainability Committee is going to consider looking at a plastic bag resolution, then looking into how do we expand the tree canopy. And then finally, we're creating a zoning ad hoc committee. So trying to get a little input from all the subcommittees to create a zoning ad hoc committee to engage with the OHM and the steering committee and the zoning refresh. So that is where things stand with the Resiliency Board. All right, so now we have a presentation by Doreen and Kate regarding the Mount Lebanon Partnership.
Yeah.
All right, let's See if I can get my technology to work. That's always the first question.
Yeah.
So this will be an interesting attempt. I've not done this with one screen before. Normally I have my,
Your master control center.
yes, you should see my office.
You can always screen
It's
out
working.
Ian,
There we go.
and
Okay.
he'll come help.
That's what I do.
The other
Yeah,
tech
he's our
experts,
kind of
right?
secret weapon. Yeah, he really is.
Our All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to join this evening. I'm Kate Irvin. I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Mount Lebanon Partnership, and joining me is Doreen Saletti, our Board President. I apologize, I am recovering from bronchitis, so my voice is a little bit in and out, but if you can't hear me, just yell at me and I will speak louder. Sorry. So tonight we'd like to really briefly share a bit about how the partnership's evolved over the past several years, and then where we're headed and how we kind of continue to hope to partner with the municipality to really strengthen Uptown. We've experienced some growth in the recent years, and our board's been spending a lot of time strategically thinking about how we build on that momentum while ensuring that our organization becomes sustainable for the long term. So before we talk about the partnership itself, I really want to kind of start talking about, and it's a little bit small there, but if anyone wants to see these slides later, just let me know. But I want us to kind of talk a little bit about why Uptown is important and why it matters. Because a thriving business district, it's not just a collection of shops and restaurants, but it's really one of the defining features of a strong community. And when people think about Mount Lebanon and what makes it special, they're often thinking about our walkable neighborhoods, our public spaces, our local businesses, and our ability to really gather, kind of as Jeff spoke about earlier, that ability to be social. I know when my husband and I moved here 5 years ago, one of our biggest priorities was living within walking distance of a very vibrant business district. We explored neighborhoods all over Pittsburgh, and we settled on Mount Lebanon, not for the school district, not for anything else, but really for Uptown. That was the selling feature for us. We wanted to know we could grab coffee on a Saturday morning, enjoy some music, walk to dinner, and really get to know our neighbors. And I think that's what really makes Mount Lebanon unique, and it makes what Uptown it has is so special. And so when thinking about Uptown, we really want to be able to understand our market. One of the things that we've been working to do as an organization is to better understand who's using Uptown and how they use it. And this allows us to make more informed decisions about programming, business support, placemaking, and then long-term planning. And so today we can estimate that Uptown attracts over 750,000 visitors each year. And so this figure comes from Placer AI, which is a location tracking software tool. So one thing to note is that this only includes visitors ages 18 and over who have sort of opted into location services. We know that that is an undercount. But we think it's a good kind of baseline to understand kind of where we are as a community. And really importantly, visitors are spending an average of 76 minutes in Uptown. That means that people aren't just driving through or walking through, they're coming here to spend time. They're shopping, they're dining, they're visiting these businesses, they're attending their appointments, and they're really spending some meaningful time in the district. And then this data also reveals some clear patterns about how Uptown functions. Our strongest visitation is in the summer months, particularly July and August, as well as in May. Not sure what happens in June, but that's something we need to figure out. But also, you know, we can see that there's definitely a lunch bump that happens in that kind of 11 to 2. But we really see that biggest and highest activity in the 5 to 8 p.m. We are definitely kind of a daytime destination, but an evening dining district. And that can be really helpful as we try to figure out how to sort of scale up programming, the types of placemaking we want to do, how we want to make kind of investments in Uptown. So over the past year, we've really continued building on our momentum through a combination of signature events, placemaking initiatives, public art, and community programming. And these programs serve different purposes, but they share the same goal: bringing people into Uptown, supporting our local business ecosystem, and creating opportunities for our neighbors to connect, and really reinforcing Uptown as the heart of the community. We've continued to grow our signature Uptown market. We've expanded curbside concert series. We've continued to grow the Color Walk projections. We've grown our children's programming, and we're currently well underway planning for our artists market and emerging artists market that is in September. And we've also started preparing for our holiday programming, which will be later in the year. And so these efforts kind of create some energy and activity throughout the business district throughout the year, but they're part of something larger. You know, this is really helping kind of strengthen a community identity for Uptown and for Mount Lebanon. And events will remain one of our core strengths and components as the Mount Lebanon Partnership. But today I want to focus on how they're part of a broader strategy to kind of build that stronger Uptown and to build us as a stronger organization. And so one of the things that we're starting to really focus on is how we can strengthen Uptown through additional business support, economic development, placemaking, and long-term investment. So that's what we're going to really talk about in the bulk of this presentation. And so, as I said, we're really thinking about how can we support Uptown's long-term success. And so, you know, we've got the events that people know and love, but we really want to start evolving that out of just sort of those types of programs into more of a community and economic development. And so looking at how we can create business and community development, really growing that placemaking piece and investing in additional public art, and then looking at how we can strengthen strategic partnerships, such as our partnership with the municipality, but also grow that organizational capacity. And so, you know, one of our guiding questions as we have kind of undertaken strategic planning this year is, you know, what does Uptown need from the partnership over the next 5 years or next 10 years? And so that's been sort of a guiding principle as we really start to explore. And so we've kind of identified 5 strategic priorities for Uptown's future that the Mount Lebanon Partnership can be a part of. And you know, priority number 1 is really strengthening those public spaces and placemaking. Clearview Common is a wonderful public space. We really want to see it improve. It is one of the heart of Uptown's district. And so we want to be able to have that be both easily activated, but also passively activated. We want people to feel comfortable just using that space. If you were at the market, Uptown Market this past Saturday, we also had a children's event, the Secret Garden. We had over 200 children in Clearview Common between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. That was with minimal investment, other than just a lot of volunteer energy, and some fantastic programming. You know, those are the types of things that can really strengthen how people use but also see these public spaces. And that really links to our second strategic priority of really activating Uptown, you know, creating that vibrancy that drives additional foot traffic. We also want to work with the municipality on improving the streetscape. We've made huge strides over the last 5 to 10 years on the streetscapes in Mount Lebanon and Uptown, but there's more that can be done, and we really want to create a more inviting, safe, and cohesive Uptown. And then our 4th priority is really to support the community serving businesses, whether that's, you know, through recruitment programs or retention initiatives. And that would be really in partnership with municipalities already kind of build out recruitment efforts. And for us internally, we really want to grow and build that organizational sustainability so that we're a partnership that's built to last and kind of weather economic storms, other changes sort of afoot. And so we've been working on turning some of these strategies into action. Our first sort of program that we've been able to roll out kind of connected to that business support is the Storefront Improvement Grant. We have approved our first storefront facade grant. We have 2 in the pipeline and applications under development, and we have another 3 that we're in discussions with. So we are hoping to have a minimum of 4 to 5 of those applications approved before the end of this fiscal year. In addition, we are looking at how we can support the municipalities' business attraction and retention, sort of helping find where there might be gaps in the market. If businesses do have turnover, what can we do to fill those spaces? Can we, even if just serving as a partner and a connector between new businesses and the municipality, kind of funneling sort of the pipeline to the municipality and to those private property owners. Additionally, through the Storefront Improvement Grant Program, we have been building new relationships with business and property owners, which can also then help feed that goal of business attraction and retention. And then 4th, we're looking at how we might fund a tenant improvement fund. One of the large gaps when opening a new business is build out costs. A lot of our property owners either don't have the full amount to be able to meet their tenant halfway. The space needs significant improvement, or if you're a mom and pop business, you may just not have the liquid capital to do a full build out. And so looking for ways that we can help provide some grant funding. So we're still in kind of initial concept stages. Additionally, we don't want to just support new businesses. We don't want to just focus on recruitment. We also want to make sure that we can help our legacy businesses through retention. And the Storefront Improvement Fund, our goal would be to make it flexible enough that our legacy businesses, our existing businesses who need a little bit of help refreshing their storefront, maybe they need some design assistance to kind of modernize their window displays or their interior layouts, they might be able to look towards this fund to sort of help match that. So these are the programs we're kind of looking at exploring. The Storefront Improvement Grant is sort of the proof of concept. As we can kind of roll that fund out more, then we can use that to hopefully leverage additional programs. And then another big part of what we've been focusing on this year is really that responsible stewardship. I believe everyone received a handout from us in advance, both our 2025 year in review, but also our kind of financial sustainability framework that we've been looking at. We're really focused on diversifying our revenue. We've been growing our sponsorships over the last year. We have seen with a kind of a slight softer sponsorship environment this year as we've had some economic uncertainty, but we have spoken with our sponsors. We do, they have indicated they will, anyone that hasn't returned this year is planning to return next year. But that has really reinforced something we've been discussing for a long time, is that a strong organization needs a diversified funding model. And so we've spent the past several months really developing this sustainability framework. We'll be presenting it at our board meeting next week for more in-depth discussion. But it's really built around 5 guiding principles. Diversify the existing revenue through multiple resilient income streams, continue to grow our corporate sponsorships and business partnerships, expand grant funding and outside investment, and launch a new community giving initiative that invites residents, businesses, and community supporters to invest in Uptown's future, and then leverage every public dollar by attracting private and philanthropic investment in the community. I do want to note we have discussed whether we should adopt a more traditional membership model. Ultimately, at the moment, we believe that our role is different. We're a community development organization and not a chamber of commerce. And so then rather than creating a membership structure, which could blur some of those roles, we're really focused on creating more of a broad community support through philanthropy, sponsorships, partnerships, engagement, and kind of community investment. And so our goal in this funding model is to create a model where really no single source is carrying the organization, but will make the partnership more resilient and allow us also to pursue larger opportunities, such as things like a tenant improvement fund, so that we can really make a greater impact with every public dollar invested. And so then we want to zoom out and say, okay, where can we work together? As I sort of already mentioned, we really do want to get involved more deeply in that attraction and retention of our businesses. And I think utilizing some of our program components, as well as just creating that active and engaged Uptown that makes people want to both kind of spend time there, but also open businesses there. We would love to kind of continue our relationship with the municipality through the redevelopment projects. We know that there's a handful kind of slated for redevelopment, including the South Garage, Clearview Common. So we really want to kind of be an active partner in those projects as they roll out. We would like to continue engaging in public art. Color Walk has been an extremely fun project. We want to continue to add to it. We want to continue to build it out, but we also want to think beyond Color Walk. What are the next pathways for public art that we can work with the municipality on? We also want to kind of work with the municipality and provide expert guidance. We have both technical and professional expertise within the Mount Lebanon Partnership. Our board is extremely diverse and brings an assortment and a slew of technical and professional expertise, placemaking, planning, urban design, marketing, communications, economic development. These are experts who are excited, engaged, and wanting to work with the municipality and provide any of that type of expertise. And then additionally, partnering on grant opportunities. There are times that a 501c3 can go after opportunities a municipality can't. There are times when a municipality can go after grants that are funding streams that we can't, but might want partnership with us or letters of support and vice versa. So we really see that as an opportunity where we can combine efforts and work together to really bring in additional funding. And so really with that, I want to kind of give us some time for some discussion and a conversation around kind of how we can shape the future of Uptown together. And so I want to kind of open it with 3 questions of sort of, and these do not have to all be answered today, but really we want to kind of end on these 3 questions of, where do you see the partnership adding the greatest value? And which priorities should we really be helping advance together from your perspective? And then how can we work together to accelerate those priorities? So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Very informative, and certainly I think I can speak for all of us when we say how much we appreciate the partnership's effort and the contributions that you make to the district. And I've always seen these organizations as being a really important go-between between the public sector and private sector, and that advocating that there's certain things that we're more of a that being a legislative body, it's not our place to necessarily advocate or push for certain things. So I think it's very useful to have an organization that advocates on behalf of the businesses, or may explain at times why the municipality might be, doing this. I mean, a case like design guidelines, that might not be something that everybody loves, but on the other hand, I think it's a partnership's place to help make the case that why that's going to, in the end, benefit the district overall and create higher property values and in turn, better tenants. So that's how I kind of view the organization operating.
Yeah, thank you. And that's one of the things that I think is, a uniqueness that we can bring to the table, and something that adds real value is that we really focus on the community supporting business district. We're not representing just business. We're not representing the municipality. We're really focused on how Uptown itself really plays on who Mount Lebanon is as a community, or what Mount Lebanon is as a community. So some of the things that Kate started with this presentation related to the additional economic value that Uptown brings, related to the way that Uptown helps influence choices for residents that are thinking about Mount Lebanon. There are a lot of connections there, and it's just it's a wonderful thing that we can look at it from that perspective and not be limited in terms of one particular segment of the market.
I think about, for me, it's really a question of how do you kind of split responsibilities, right? And I think Jeff touched on it a little bit. Yeah, the municipality has a very clear set of responsibilities, right, that we have in terms of maintaining public assets. But that line is very finite in Uptown, right? I mean, sidewalks. The rest of it's private property, and that, for me, is where I see a lot of the opportunity. I mean, we've done our part, right, to rebuild the infrastructure, to provide the foundation upon which community can happen. So for me, the question is how do we get the property owners who benefit from this activity, to engage? And I think some of them are. I don't, right? But for me, I think that's not the municipality's job. I should not be trying to personally incentivize an individual business, my opinion. I should not be putting public dollars against private interest, personal opinion. So the partnership has a very unique opportunity to create momentum in the private sector that the public sector shouldn't probably have, right? You can be a more community engaging organization and create momentum and attract dollars that aren't public dollars, to help those businesses, right, create more vibrancy. So I think for me, that's the question, is how do we understand that separation and that set of responsibility? Because there is overlap, clearly, right? Eric Milliron is right, fully engaged in economic activity for municipality, and it's critical. But there's also a line where the municipality shouldn't try to be the community. And the community shouldn't try to be the municipality, right? We've got lots of mechanisms, right? We've got a lot of expertise, and we have the mechanisms to facilitate that expertise collaboration. So I don't want to duplicate. What I want to do is create those opportunities to find, shared opportunity and empower the partnership to go forth and create a vibrant business district, on your own. not on your own, but I think you get my point, right?
No, it's still a partnership, and that's why we love
Right.
that our name is, we're not specifically, it doesn't say CDC in our name, although that's how we operate, but it is a partnership because we really do need municipal support for much of what we do, our municipal approval. And so it's important for us to be able to collaborate effectively. And yes, Eric has a specific role, but we can support him. And we can maybe go beyond with things like the storefront improvement grant, with some of the retail incentives that Kate mentioned. You know, there are some additional things that we can bring to the table that if we're working in close collaboration, again, we can add real value and help benefit the entirety of the community through the work that we do in Uptown.
I have never seen a community development corporation in the city of Pittsburgh make it without municipal support.
Correct.
Just gonna say that.
Absolutely.
And I've been involved with them for so many years now, over 40 years. Never has one of them made it without some municipal seed money and some municipal support. And I don't have any problem with it. I think it's a value added thing. If we're gonna put money into sidewalks, when you activate a business district, you also cut down on crime, for example, right away. There are all sorts of benefits that come from investing in a business district, making sure that it, really is vibrant. So I am okay with the fact that we do add some support to it. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's important.
Agreed. I think it lessens the burden of government while also
Right.
increasing the tax base. And
Yeah.
I'm very much a big believer in
Right.
kind of dovetailing with what Commissioner Flynn
Right.
said, that, we are in charge of the public realm. And so that's the space between the buildings, and what can we do to make that as inviting as possible, which we've invested in heavily in recent years. And then we also create the framework around, what is acceptable and what isn't. We've made good progress in terms of the some of the commercial enforcement recently, and if you look across the street, that's been
I know,
going well.
hasn't it?
So
Wow.
that's all been great. So yeah, I very much see that sort of in between area is like we only so much that we can do, but then an organization advocating for better design within the businesses, helping them thrive and making sure that they have everything they need isn't our job, but we absolutely need that to be done. So and the events, programming certainly is an important part. How do we make sure that people continue to use the district and habituate them to coming here, advocacy, which is a big part. So yeah, I agree with Commissioner Swager Wilson that's public funding is an important component of the overall budget.
There's something that just came to my mind. I went to a very small women's college. I promise this is going somewhere. Very small women's college. And women's colleges took a real dive, after I was there having fun. And my college took an unusual approach. It actually raised the standards for people to get into it. And all of a sudden, applications started to go up. And it's the same kind of thing in a business district. When you start raising the standards, when you start saying, hey, excuse me, this is Mount Lebanon, and we think highly of ourselves. We think our community is the best, and by God, we want the best investment in it. We want the best design. That's really important to do. It's just makes
Yeah,
it work.
and I was just going to say, I think that's part of what we can bring to the table is that reframing. When you do have expectations for businesses,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily a bad thing. I have to keep my grass at a certain height or I get cited.
Right.
So businesses have certain standards they need to meet as well. And it doesn't just benefit them individually, it benefits the businesses in the business district collectively, and then has that larger positive impact on the community.
Yeah.
So it is important. And again, we can help with some of those conversations.
But I
Things,
think also it's important for us to help with some of the funding for those improvements. I think sometimes people start a business
Yeah.
and it's going well and they don't know how to do they don't have the
Sure.
skill set. And so I think that's where, we also want to be able to leverage the support that municipality provides, both as a partner, but also as a funder, to go after additional dollars so that we're not solely reliant on the municipality for that funding, but that we can say, hey, we've got, this pilot program, we're gonna go after this foundation, and this foundation to really expand these programs. We can show them sort of a proof of concept and see if they're willing to invest in kind of keeping our business district thriving. And I think it becomes more compelling as well when it's not just us going there, but when we go there with the support of the municipality, both sort of behind us, but also financially behind us.
Do we have any success in going after the philanthropic community?
That's our next, I mean, that's part of our plan.
And I've had to do that before, but it was not for Mount Lebanon.
I've done it not for Mount Lebanon, but I think that's,
Sort of press communities.
well, and,
Yeah.
but I do think there is more of an appetite post-COVID to reinvest in our business districts, kind of more broadly. I think there was an understanding of how important they became when everything shut down. And I think if we can demonstrate sort of why this is needed, and it doesn't have to be huge dollars, you know, I think
Yeah,
with
sure.
tenant improvements, we're not looking at doing $1 million deals where it's like 5,000, you know, matching requirement.
Sure.
That can make a huge impact.
Sure.
You know, it might even be $1,200 just to redesign your windows or clean them. You know, minimal things that can help kind of spur some additional investment, but also can help bridge gaps with recruitment. And it can be a bit more of the carrot approach to the ordinance
right, sure.
approach.
Yeah, and I think, this might be helpful, and I've talked to also, members of the staff and other commissioners about if maybe at some point we had more like detailed information regarding the facade grant program. And I know it's been difficult sometimes with the signage because, there may be zoning changes, but it sounds like, some have gone forward. And that would just be helpful to have like more data and more understanding, as we're considering, additional funding, et cetera, that would help, so.
And I will say the full program, including guidelines, application, everything is on our website. And that was developed in partnership with the municipality.
Right.
Right, but just sort of what your experiences has been, the sort of successes going forwards, like who has participated in this, who has benefited in this, just having more information beyond what's, on your website.
We'll
So,
provide all of that
sure.
as these get finalized and they come to fruition. Because we'll be tracking that data for ourselves, but also to share with you.
Great news on the facade grant program. I know that's been a long time coming, so good that somebody has already has joined the program and some others in the pipeline. I'd love to hear that.
So we're excited about that.
Good.
I would be curious to put number 2 back to you. How can municipality be more helpful to you?
I think the continued support is certainly very helpful. I think that's important. Again, as Kate said, often we need seed funding to be able to move initiatives forward. And I think working in collaboration, I've been very grateful for the time that Keith spends every month meeting with us so that we can make sure we're connecting. Because if there are particular needs that you have that we can support, we'd love to, know what those are. And if there are needs that we have that you can support, it's been great to be able to share those and to have such open conversation. So I think that collaboration is really what's key.
But, it's interesting as I think about it, right? And I was here and I was on the partnership board when we went through COVID. And I was a strong advocate of get more money to the partnership right now. But COVID was a long time ago now. We're kind of past that. And for me, it's like, how do we get back to an understandable steady state, right? Of kind of organizational capacity support, right? Just baseline capacity.
Sure.
But then think about this on a programmatic basis, right? Some number to support the organizations, right, just core function, but then facade grant program. Support, some funding for that. Another program, right, whatever the programs become, as opposed to just some one lump number. Because I think that creates a more sustainable and fluid dynamic of, hey, we want to try this program. That's not saying we don't want the 10,000 for the baseline,
Sure.
right? But that way, it's not a just blanket number come budget season. Because that way, I think we have a little bit more opportunity to have those discussions and frankly, commissions will change over time.
Yeah.
And that way, hopefully, right, their interests can be attracted.
Yeah.
But your baseline is still protected in that dialogue. So I
And I can do that.
Well, I think that's an extremely valuable piece of feedback for us because, obviously we are developing our budgets right now. We have our kind of updated priorities. Obviously operational costs are always the hardest thing to fund, but we have a variety of avenues now that have changed from when I joined the partnership a few years ago. So we have more ways of funding some of the operational costs. It's nice if we have some of that kind of support, even at a lower level, but then if we can say, but, this ask is actually to fund this, and that, so it's much more specific. And I think that guidance helps me really develop our budget and our budget asks.
Well, and I think it creates, again, a lot more flexibility, right? You could have a big thing that it gets really exciting. Well, that might justify a larger ask.
Yeah.
Right? And that's great. But it's also understood as a point in time exercise as opposed to we're going to perpetuate this forever.
Perpetual, yes.
Right? Which is dangerous for everybody, right? Because at some point.
Accountability too, you can say, you put it, we gave you this much for facades, this much else was also put in, this is what the
Right.
improvement has been. And that's important, those are important statistics to have.
Absolutely.
And I think Commissioner Siegler, last year, we changed the process for community organizations so that they needed to provide to us some specific information as to what the use of those funds would be.
Right, sure.
And then as they come back this year, begin the budget process for 2027, there was sort of a reporting out of, okay, so you asked for X number of dollars for this. Show us what you did with it. So I think we'll start to get a little bit more of that sort of detail related to where those funds are being expended.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and we're certainly open to feedback at any point, just reach out. And if there's something else you'd like to see, let us know. We're glad to put things together. I have to say, it's been amazing to have the economic development and organizational expertise that Kate has brought to the table.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we've seen some of the shifts we've seen over the last several years, because she's really brought a new level of knowledge to the partnership board and allowed us to move beyond some of the basic CDC functions that we were completing in the past. So thank you.
Again, on behalf of SALT, thank you very much for the work that you do with the
Yes.
partnership.
Thank you.
It certainly
100%.
strengthens the community as a whole,
Right.
makes it a more inviting place to live, and has a huge impact, so thank you, Kate.
And don't move, Kate. You're not not Lebanon. All right.
All right, Rodney and Josh.
Dun, dun,
God bless you.
Here we are.
Roman?
Yeah,
Thanks for having us again.
yeah.
So last month we were here and we discussed obviously the whole process as far as the review and issuance of permits. So we went back and thanks to Keith and Ian and Kate for running some of the numbers and putting together some of the information that we have tonight, as well as what we did in trying to get some real life numbers for the month of July. So obviously, we're here tonight to talk about the permit issuance and the productivity analysis and proposal and what we found through that.
Interesting statistics.
So overall, we're gonna go through and explain the data that we've come up with, the overall turnaround time. We'll give some examples of the review cycle for different types of permits. And we'll talk about some increase in construction costs, because that was brought up last month was there a relationship between construction cost and the number of permits that we've actually issued, and see for review. And then talk about potentially maybe the benefits of a plans examiner or permit coordinator role, that could be provided possibly for the inspections office. So in some of the data that we put together as we talked last month, we really didn't have any single place that we could find correct data to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So all we could do was pull out the information that we had within Municipity, which was brought from the previous programs, that didn't really have that finite data to basically comprehend of how much time that we've had the permit for review in our hands, and how much back and forth we've done with the applicant, or how much time that they've had the application in their hands as far as making revisions or amending things to bring it into compliance. So through Kate, we basically had a 30-day window period, basically a benchmark, just to have a benchmark to basically run some numbers off of. And obviously, you know, these numbers was basically, it didn't account for, you know, we did business days. It didn't account for the holidays, obviously, and it didn't reflect the time of the whole review process. So we basically looked at it from the first application date to the actual issuance date. So it didn't account for all the cycle of review and communication back and forth as part of that plan review. And then, as I mentioned earlier, for the month of July, we started tracking, each of us as plans examiners. We actually on what we call the purple slip, it's like the final fee schedule that we hand out. And then Diane will send out an email basically explaining what those fees are. We actually put on the bottom of that, you know, how many days that we've had it in our possession for review, and then basically take into account with the emails that we get, the communication through Municity, phone calls, et cetera, how much time that permit sat with the actual applicant to make decisions or changes or revisions to it. So, and we're gonna present both of these numbers tonight. So that was a big eye-opener as far as what we found as far as the data goes. And then obviously, this data excludes the occupancy permits and, you know, retroactively done permits and the outliers that, you know, sort of were beyond that range. So you can see here, based on 2,961 permits in 2023, basically our review percentage for permits issued under the 30 days was 69.4%. In 24, we went down a little bit to 62.3. And then in 25, we jumped up to 71. And halfway through that 25 period, that's when we actually went live with the Municity. And this year, we're up to 82.4% being issued under that benchmark of that 30-day period. And then as a summary, out of those 2,961 permits, you can see there 2,028 permits were actually issued within that 30-day period. And 933 were slightly above that. And then you can see 68.5% under that 30-day period were issued. So we were at 68.5% as an average from 23 to 26. And then we had a 21 business day mode and a 22 business day median for all permits within that time frame.
So now we're gonna get into basically what Rodney brought up is in July, we started tracking basically how many days we had in our hands. And if we sent out an email for revisions or more information, how many days they had in their hands, basically. So we color coded these. Green was basically your limited review, easy stuff we got out the door quickly. The yellowish in the middle is middle of the road. There might have been some exchanges back and forth. And then the red was extensive. It was usually involved a lot of information, a lot of exchanges to get the right show code compliance or missing information, things like that. So here's actual examples, and obviously we removed addresses and things like that, but these are permit examples, so I can run through a few of these. Basically in the green, we had a number of building permits here. A residential building permit was a deck alteration, and it was brought up in the past about the dollar amount of the project, does it reflect with the review time? It does and it doesn't. More expensive projects sometimes go out quick because they have a lot of good information right away and you don't need a lot of revision. And some of the simpler stuff might have a lot more back and forth just to show code compliance. So up here in the green, we have a deck permit that had an alteration to a deck. It was out within 10 days. Front porch stairs means of egress, a $4,000 job, 12 days. There was a commercial building permit. It was about $17,000. It went out within 6 days. And another front porch means of egress. It was a $21,000 job. We had it for 3 days and we waited for revisions or more information 5 days. Middle of the road in your yellow there, another example, another front porch. It was an $18,000 job. So we see the dollar amounts do go up a little bit here. It was issued within 18 days and we waited 2 days for some more information from them. That next one there, residential building permit, was addition and some engineer retaining walls. It was a $135,000 job. It was 13 days in our hands and 19 days in there, but that 19 days also includes Gateway Engineers review. So in that particular job, we had to send out some of that stuff for Gateway's review. So that was additional time waiting for Gateway to get back to us even.
Any wall over 4 feet has to have engineering
Engineered
drawings.
stamped drawings.
Correct.
And so that's, I think that's kind of an
It takes
important
time.
point, that for some of these, there are
Right.
requirement that we send it to Gateway to have an engineering review done. That'll also happen a lot of times with a grading permit.
Right.
So that sort of extends the time a little bit because of the need to go out to
Right.
Gateway.
Yeah,
for
and then,
additional review.
and it's mainly the larger walls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if
That's-
we get
anything over
anywhere
4
from
feet,
like,
yeah,
4
6.
feet to
Yeah.
6 to 8 feet, depending on the complexity of the design.
Right.
We can review it in-house, but those larger ones, we tend to basically send it out to Gateway because they'll have their engineers look at the actual design to make sure that,
Sure.
they have everything that they need
Right.
as far as the soil analysis and,
Everything else.
different methods of reviewing it, as well as sometimes they come back and have the request for construction cost, and we actually enter into an agreement with the homeowner or the property owner, basically, to ensure that that construction gets done because they are such large projects. So that takes additional time as well, going back and forth, preparing the license agreement to make sure that they post the security and the amount, required to ensure completion of the project.
Because otherwise, shall we just say the land could come down on somebody else's property?
Exactly.
Let's just be
And-
clear as to what the
and-
problem is here.
That's been the most
It's not
difficult
minor, it's major.
thing over the
Yeah.
last several years is, since the inception of the stormwater management ordinance, when we look at these projects, you don't particularly look, singularly at the project or the property that you're actually reviewing. You have to analyze it to make sure that none of the neighbors are gonna be affected as well,
Right.
so,
Stormwater has to be contained on the
that-
property.
that adds to the going back and forth because of the different requirements for the
Right.
stormwater and to make sure that you're controlling the stormwater on your property as best as possible.
That keeps it from flooding other people's houses.
Correct.
So it's important.
That next one in the middle there, that one that throws off the skew of the dollar amount in comparison to the project. It was a $750,000 residential addition. Issued it in our hands within 15 business days, and they had it for 19 for some excessive revision, so. And I'll skip down to the bottom here in the red. Obviously, you see some more notes on the right-hand side. But a solar panel project is a $35,000 job. It was 30 days in our hands and 20 days in theirs, but that one took 4+ revisions and correspondence back and forth just to get them to show code compliance on the plans to get that issued. The next one there is a patio permit. Could seem simple job, it's $13,000. We had it 12 days, they had it 47 days. The application came in initially incomplete. There were multiple emails and phone calls with limited response just to get them to show us code compliance. Means of egress retaining wall driveway project, $77,000. 22 days in our hands, 32 days in theirs. Again, multiple emails, calls, for a complete submittal for code compliance. And the last one there was a wall anchor job that had a sump pump and some things, $27,000 or $26,000. 20 days in our hands and 41 days in theirs. a lot of that is, you know, back and forth. I don't know if it's, the time starts ticking when we get the application in the system. And it's hard to track everything. So these are from this month of July. So the next slide here is basically a summary. As of July 24th, last Friday, we issued 90 permits in this month. The average internal time was 17.6 days turnaround. And the average external time was 20 and a half days. And then I went a little farther and got the modes on both of those. The most common day on our internal time was 13 business days. And the most common external time was 20 business days. And that's not every permit that we review, every application review, but that's a good understanding of what we go through in July for just turnaround time to review and issue a permit. Now, one thing I did look at that I didn't end up putting in the slide that I thought about it later was how many actual applications require us to go back and forth, right? And I didn't put that in there, but I did look at it prior. It's a little bit over 50% of what we do. We just can't go through an issue. We find something, we email something out, we're looking for more information. One before I came downstairs was the drawings and everything were perfect and wonderful. I was missing 2 applications for the project. So I had to email out for applications and that's one, it's just gonna wait till they get to us back before I can issue those.
The year-over-year growth for construction costs, this is what the numbers basically showed, pulling from 23 to 26. We had a slight decrease from 23 to 24, 3.9%. We had a significant jump from 24 to 25 at 38.8%. And from overall, the average cost from 23 to 26 was up 43.6% as far as construction cost. And we pull those from what the costs are listed on the applications.
Sure.
So it's accurate, but at the same time, you know, it could be more or less, basically, depending on what is actually being reported on the application as far as the actual construction cost. If you take a look at the total estimated construction cost for 23, for all the permits issued in 23 was $28,758,000. 24 was a little over 27.5 million. And then we had that big jump in 2025 up to 38 million. And so far on track through May of this year, we're at 20 million just with what we've issued through May. So that's how those numbers that, you know, the year-over-year numbers come from.
And that 20 million for this year through the end of May is tracking in comparison over last year of 28.4% above that.
So some key insights, you know, strong on-time performance, you know, 68.5% of the permits that were analyzed at 2961. You know, the 2028 were issued within 30 business days from 23 to 26. For 26, that number increased to 82% of the issued permits within that time period. And then the mode within 21 business days, you know, basically showed that we're in that time period as far as, you know, being very similar to the actual numbers that July has shown us, you know, just slightly less, but, you know, the difference between time in our hands and times in the applicant's hands, you know, basically stayed the same. But it's a slight decrease, you know, with the actual numbers. And the increase in number of permits, you know, as we previously discussed, with the amount of permits, you know, increased 1,122 permits in 25 compared to 962 in 24. And, you know, obviously this year through May, we're at 407. We're shooting for a higher year overall compared to last year. You know, so it definitely, with the amount of permits and the amount of inspections that each of those permits require, obviously it's, you know, it increases our workload for the staff. And then we, basically discussed the option of potentially having a plans examiner and permit coordinator to basically, help run interference, for the initial review process when the applicants come in. That way the application is not sitting there waiting for us to review it to find out that there may be information missing. So it'll help speed up some of that time and clarify what is actually needed. You can see here, the plans examiner and coordinator, a total number of permit applications from 23 through May of 26 was 3,490 permits plus, and the estimated permits to be issued, again, we're gonna be over 1,100 permits.
That's where we're trying.
So again, the whole goal potentially with the plans examiner and permit coordinator would be to reduce that initial processing time by making sure all the data is there for us to review when they actually come to the table to be reviewed. And if all the data is there and clear and concise, it takes significant amount of time off the whole issuance process. So we open up to any questions that you all have.
The data is great. I think the thing that I just kept coming back to in my mind was seasonality. Right, you showed the annual numbers, right, which is really helpful, but I'm genuinely curious, right, is spring, right, when it all happens, right, and then it's construction and then and how do we understand, right, volume of activity, right, and need for, right?
Well, that's the big question, and I brought that up last month, is because, obviously those schedules that we send out every month, with the packets, basically shows, what we've done, and month over month, you can see in some of those, and unfortunately I didn't bring one with me tonight, but obviously spring is heavy because everybody wants to get geared up to get their permits issued to work during the summer months. So it's hard to balance that sometimes because we try to stay ahead of the game, but if we get inundated with applications and you throw in the complications of going back and forth, at the same time, we're working with existing applications that the application, even though the permit's issued, it doesn't mean that we're done reviewing because there are changes in the field. And, on an average, probably more than 50% of those change in the field just because of situations that they find. The architect or designer might think that wall is a stud wall with a brick veneer, and they open it up and they realize it's a speed tile wall, so they can't fasten to it. So we run into that all the time, yeah. And it takes time away from those reviews. I mean, there's certain days that literally I'm just going back and forth with existing permits that I don't really even have time to look at new applications. So we're constantly juggling, the information that we're receiving and trying to get it out as fast as we can to do that. So, and it's hard to answer your question because, again, we can't control when the permits are coming in.
Right, no, but I think for me, right, it's kind of understanding the patterns,
Right.
right? In so much as, right, we know that this is kind of the seasonal cycle,
Right.
right? And we know that this is within that cycle, there are work packets, for lack of a better description, right, that you guys have to manage.
Correct.
And if the volume goes up 5%, right, at some point there's a breaking point, right? And that we need to, things either slow down, well, they will slow down, right? Or you're working more, maybe, but chances are things are gonna, at some point need to slow down. So how do we understand, right, that those volumes, right? Because again, it might not be that we need, right, a full-time person, right, all year long. But it may be that we need part-time people for 4 months a year. And I don't know if that's even possible, but understanding the kind of the patterns of use, right, and the growth patterns, I think, helps kind of inform that. And that's a seasonal discussion as much as it is a growth over time.
Yeah, and I've considered your question a little bit. First, just to give you some additional information that we didn't have until Ian sent it to us because he researches everything. You often will hear, I went to fill in a community and I got my permit in X number of days. So for a 4-year average, Upper St. Clair issues 267 permits per year. Bethel Park issues 415. Peters issues 366, and we averaged 987 permits per year.
Oh my God.
So you can see there's a
That's phenomenal.
significantly higher volume of permits being issued here. But to the question of, is this a full-time, is it a seasonal, is it a part-time?
Right.
I said to myself, okay, so let's say that we get into a season where we have less.
Right, can we
In
do it,
terms of
do
volume.
something else?
What's the utility for the
Yeah.
position?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
We have, believe it or not, people go through the process, they get a permit issued,
Right,
right? They follow all the rules, their
Yeah.
contractor, and maybe the contractor only calls for a footer inspection. Doesn't call for the framing, doesn't call for the
Right.
insulation,
Yeah.
doesn't call for any of that. So now, 3 years go by
right,
and they're selling the house.
right.
And as part of that lien letter search,
Yeah.
we go back and we go, well, wait a minute. They never got all of these inspections, right? Potentially, this person could go back through
Mhm,
permits that have been issued
mhm.
and just reach out and say, hey, we know that you received a permit to do whatever it is.
Yeah.
Is it done? Did the contractor start?
Mhm.
Where are they? So that we can try to address that sooner as opposed to at point of sale, where now everybody's panicked, right?
Mhm.
Because you've got a
Sure.
closing date.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're trying to scramble to allow you, we don't want to hold up the sale of the property.
Right.
I mean, we do have language that we can include that says either you got a permit and didn't call for all the required inspections, so we can't verify. Not ideal, right? So again, I think there would be some other utilities potentially
Absolutely.
for this position to sort of begin to address some of those types of things.
So what kind of, my only concern, and I think you need somebody like this, I don't have a problem with that, but I spent some time recently with one of the other council people from Bethel Park, and they were talking about their problems with just getting people to do permitting and things like that. What kind of person?
There is a
Yeah.
decrease
Yeah.
because of the amount of certifications. I mean, the state
Okay.
requires us, to
So
get,
this person would have to be certified
they would
to
have, if they want to review
Plans.
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 If they want to review the information to make sure that it's all concise, they don't
They don't
necessarily need
necessarily have
certification.
to, right,
But
okay.
if we want them to take that extra step and have it,
Yeah.
you
But we could
know,
always then get them certified at that point.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and there are inspector certifications as well as plans examiner certifications. And the accessibility is
Sure.
combined.
As a whole.
So it's one certification and you're both an inspector and a plans examiner.
And could there also be a role for this person if maybe there is some downtime that they could strategically go around Mount Lebanon, perhaps in both of your directions to say like, here's an area where there are some code violations.
Absolutely.
And then
Be proactive.
citations could be issued, because that's part of the resiliency, a lot of what, they've worked on a lot with these committees, the partnership, this all kind of flows together. So, and I know you guys are so busy, you don't have time necessarily just to like looking for code violations. And we talked, to Keith about this, and how that's something that was done previously when we didn't have so many applications. So it seems as though there could be ways that this person could, continue to be busy even during some of the slower months. And just out of curiosity, what is the slowest month from your perspective in your office?
Probably December, if I would,
Yeah,
Late December, early
yeah,
January.
if I would
Yeah.
have to guess,
Sure.
because I think, one, because of the holidays,
Right.
obviously,
Right.
but I think everybody's geared down because of the weather and the holidays, that usually December is our slowest month.
So
Right,
you
and there-
heard it here, folks, get your permits.
Yeah, I mean, you see just so much on,
Do a discount.
like revoke complaints on all of our online sites about people complaining because they are not shoveling as they should, which is another violation of the code. So I mean, that's just more code violation you can look for in December, January, so.
Yeah, the police handle sidewalks,
yeah.
but,
Right, good point, yes. But there's just other things that are related to, the
Oh,
snow,
they-
right, yeah.
trust me, there is
to do.
plenty of information and that needs researched as far as well as all the different activities that are,
Yeah.
you know, under the municipal code that basically we have to interact with. So, yes, there's definitely, you could keep people busy. There's no doubt about it. Okay?
Excellent, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great,
Thank
great,
you.
Guys,
great data.
very interesting data.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah.
Now we get to the big excitement.
It was Katie Campbell he was thinking of.
No, yeah.
Not Kate Urban, because
I know, I was like, not me.
Kate looked at me like, what is that?
Sorry.
Did I provide data I don't even remember?
Good evening, Commission. I'm here tonight. I did not apply for a permit to present budget information. I hope I was denied, but I evidently was not. The manager pushed it through, so here I am. So here you are. So as you know, our stormwater funding will not be there in 2027, so we need to do something about it. So the object of tonight is to kind of discuss and give you some historical background as to what it's funding currently. I'm not going to go all the way back to 2011, but I will go back to when we started a 12.5% increase a couple years ago, where the intent was to build a bigger capital portion of the stormwater funding for the road program, the reconstruction program, and also the stormwater NPDES permit and all those things that are required for that. So we'll go over that quickly and then discuss how the different tax funding streams could supplement this funding. So let's see if this works. It's not working, of course. It has to play a video. It's playing a
You need
video
a
for you.
permit.
Yes, I need a permit for evidently, yes. All right, so what does the stormwater fund in 2027 look like if we were able to do it? It would have been a 12.81 per equivalent dwelling unit. We had 15,156 EDUs as of the 2026 billing period, which equates to 2.3 million. Based on our collections, we would collect about 2.28 million. So that's kind of what the funding gap is. So what would be a projected stormwater fund budget? There's an operating component to it. So the operating component consists of curb replacement. This is part of the mill and overlay program only. There's a separate curb component to the street reconstruction, which we'll talk about in the capital expenditures portion. So this is just for the curb replacement and mill and overlay. You then have the residential street sweeping contract that we do. The 3 sweeps we do a year is also funded from this money, as well as stormwater maintenance, so storm sewer maintenance. This is in the operating fund of 330,000. So that kind of, the 610,000 from the operating expenditures is broken out in those 3 areas. The other aspect is the capital expenditures that we would spend it on, typically or budget for. We're up to about 700,000 in curb replacement. This was part of the funding increase. So this was planned as we knew the street reconstruction program needed to increase. We knew the stormwater portion of it, which was the curbs, also needed to increase. This historically had been between 625 and 650,000. The anticipation was to be upwards of 700,000 in 2027. So obviously this is a budget. This is what it may have looked like. And the remaining fund would be any construction. So this is new pipe in the ground, lining, CCTVing, any sort of construction piece to the storm source. This can be one specific project. It could be part of the street reconstruction program. So pipe identified as part of that new pipe needed to go in that didn't exist before. There's a whole there's a whole lot of different things that it could be. Typically, this funding, prior to the increases of the 12.5% we were talking about, was something that could range. 1 year, it was 350,000. And the next year was 500,000. So it was between 350 and 500,000 typically. We had reached points of about 600,000, but as this 12.5% had increased over the last 3 years, it was going to be projected around 970,000. For that piece of it, as we were doing more stormwater projects.
So just to take this down to basics, can we just say in terms of quality of life, that one thing this does when we do this is it eliminates the ice spots?
That's a portion of it, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Well,
There was a-
just to try to translate why these big numbers can come out as being important. They're really important quality of life issues. You
Yeah.
just don't think about them because but that's what they do.
And those are usually done within a lining contract or
Yeah.
a contract where we already have unit prices in. The typical big money here is for new pipe and or specific projects that were identified. So a good one that we did a number of years ago was the one on Mount Lebanon Boulevard.
Oh, yeah.
There was one that we had to do a big pipe above it, and there was a whole thing that it was done, but it was a couple $100,000. And that's where this money really came in for. So how do we fund this funding gap? So there's two areas we looked at for this presentation. I know the commission may have other ideas. We can discuss those this evening and as we move forward to the 2027 budget. But specifically, we looked at earned income tax, which is our largest revenue source. So just to explain this slide a little bit, the 2025 current year collection, so this is done on a cash basis. So you can't take this number and tie it to my financial statements. I'm giving you straight up cash of what we get for the year. There's accruals, and I won't bore you with all that stuff, right? So this is straight cash that we receive for current year collections, meaning that in 2025, for earned income in 2025,
Right,
we receive 2025 money
in 2026.
in 2026. So the 2025 prior year collections, the majority of that, 29% of the, as you can see, there's only 1% that is years prior to that. So that would have been 2024 related cash, right? So a total of about 16.7 million in 2025 cash received. So we're projecting in 26 to be at 16,950,000. Depending on where things end up and where they shake out, maybe more, but I think we're at least going to hit budget for sure. So the 2027 projected total increase with 2% would be about 17.2%, 17.29 million for that. So of that 17.29 million, oops, did it go too far? Okay, so then did these slides get out of order? They did. These slides, I apologize, got out of order. I apologize. So the value of a increase in earned income tax. I
Yeah.
apologize, this is now slide, what slide is this now?
We don't have numbers on ours.
Sorry. These got out of order. I apologize. So the earned income tax one that says the red with 0.5%, 0.05%. So the value of a 0.05% increase in current year dollars
Yes.
is 760,000. The following year, there would be a projected 315,000 following. Right, so if you increased 0.05%
Right.
next year, in 2027, we would expect around $760,000 to come in
28.
in 2027. We would expect 315,000 to come in 2028. So the full realization of any earned income tax increase is not until the following year. And this is typically done for things like extensions, and those types of things that people are gonna have, sole proprietors, businesses that then aren't gonna necessarily file by April 15th, they may file by October 15th the following year for that. So it takes a while for it to come in, for the remainder of it. But total 2028, by the end of it, for that 0.05% increase, you could put a ballpark number of a little under 1.1 million. So 1,075,000 would be a good projection for total funding from a 0.05 tax increase. To give you an idea of what around us earned income tax rates are, there are a few that are at our level, right? So Upper St. Clair is at our level. They're another home rule community. Bethel Park for a long time was at our level, but now they're at 1.25. We're at 0.8% and they're at 1.25%. For the longest time, they went to 0.9, and then last year they increased both their real estate and their earned income tax to fund whatever they needed to fund. But for a long time, they were right on par with us. Then they increased to 0.9%, and then last year they did a large increase there. Baldwin Whitehall, same thing. They were a couple years ago, they increased their EIT as well to 1.2%. So their total earned income tax is 1.7 when you increase with the school district. So it gives you an idea of around us. There are others that are above us, and in the earned income tax piece of it. The nice piece that I'll give you about earned income tax, it keeps growing. It's our one piece that has a substantial growth. Now, real estate transfer tax, for instance, can have a big impact. It can have a $300,000 to $400,000 swing depending on. Right now, we're trending 400,000 to the good right now in home transfers. It's amazing. We've had some commercial properties as well transfer this year. The property at the Galleria, so you can have those big swings, but it's not something you can count on.
That's sustainable.
Our earned income tax is something that has been sustained. It's not really ever going down. I'm not saying it never will, but it at least flatlines if nothing else. And it is increasing, most likely year over year. So just to give you an idea there. So that's earned income tax. Any questions on that? Apologize for the slides being out of order. So now we'll go back to real estate tax. Okay, so as of the taxable assessment as of July 20th was $2,746,000,000. So that equates to the value of 1 mil of $2,746,000. And to fully fund that funding gap of 2.28 million, you need to raise real estate tax 0.85 mils. That's what the full equivalent of that funding gap I presented. The full would be 0.85 mils. The median assessed value is 191,000 right now. This is just residential properties. This does not factor in commercial properties. I'm just taking a look at the impact to a residential assessed value. So the assessed value break-even point from what you would have been charged in the stormwater fund to what it would be in assessed value would be $180,000 property. So anything assessed over $180,000 is going to pay more than any property less than $180,000. Now,
Right.
this is offset. I will say this is not a one-to-one, but it gives you an idea because it does not factor in our commercial property. While not huge and gangbusters with our commercial property, but there is a factor, but it gives you a relative ballpark of where that is. So you can see that if the funding gap is funded all by real estate, 248,000 would come from commercial or other properties, and over 2 million would come from residential properties. So that gives you an idea of the impact if you fully went real estate to fund this funding gap. So and again, for surrounding municipalities, same municipalities shown before, this is also on our website. It gives you an idea on the municipal tax. And where we're at overall when you combine school district and county millages together. Yeah, so Dormont increased last year 1.5 mils to help fund their gaps that they have. Obviously, we have a little inside knowledge on why that happened as we see that with our cooperative. But to give you an idea of where we're at relative to other communities, this kind of gives you that. This is also, again, available on our website. So forth.
This just blows that whole thing up. Their taxes are so much higher in Mount Lebanon than any place else.
Well,
Kind of
look at-
relative because you gotta factor in assessed values.
Yeah.
So
So
you're-
look at St. Clair.
Yeah.
That's lower. Like that's not what people are talking about.
Well, they're a lot lower because their earned income tax is a lot higher
Yeah, and then of course their
relatively to the
property
number of
tax
residents they
higher.
have.
Yeah.
It is, their median income is higher
Higher
than
than
ours.
ours.
So, they don't have a lot of rental properties, so they don't have
Yeah.
transients.
Yeah.
They're a different mix
Yeah.
of residents. And they're
they don't have
they're probably
sidewalks.
14,000 or more or less residents.
No
Overall.
sidewalks.
So,
Oh, right, yes.
yeah. So we went over their earned income. Any questions on real estate tax?
No.
All right, so tax increase will be needed if you want to fund to the full 2.28 million. It can be all EIT, which would, equivalently be a 1% or a 0.1% increase. While I said 760,000 of it would be current year, right? So you just double that.
Right.
So you're about a little over 1.5 million. If you doubled it, to the projections we showed before, I think that can be covered by any relative capital fund balance that we have to get us over the hump until the full receipts start paying off in 28. So if you wanted to go that way, I think a 0.1% would be just fine to get us through the 27 budget. Same thing with real estate. It doesn't have to be all I think there is a fund balance available in the capital fund to help offset that, so it doesn't have to all be within a year. You can see where receipts come in, can always appropriate unassigned fund balance in April of the following year, like we have the discussion every year. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing, but there can be a mix of all of those situations that we talked about. Other items I wanted to bring up was a dedicated millage. I don't know if that has been discussed at a commission level. So there can be a dedicated millage. So advantages of that, you then can raise property tax for a specific need, but those monies then become dedicated. You can't touch them for general purposes. It also makes it cleaner because you can see it in a dedicated fund. You can see what your balance is. There's a lot of advantages to it. Slight disadvantages that really you can repeal it, but it really becomes a dedicated funding source like it is today. It just comes from tax dollars. So that can be a special revenue fund, can continue the way it is today, and it can be from real estate tax in that way. And then you can have dedicated funding to the capital fund through an unassigned allocation. So ideas I had for other ideas to ponder as we go through to the 27 budget. So as we always discuss every year is that unassigned fund balance discussion.
Right.
We have had a goalpost of 12 to 15%, and routinely we've been over that, right? You could set a policy or, direction to the manager, doesn't have to necessarily be by ordinance, to say, hey, to look at that, you could dedicate some of that money that is over 16% or over a threshold that you may deem as a commission
I got it.
and alleviate further future budgets.
Sure, got it.
Right, and assign that money and say, okay, that's gonna be for capital and stormwater when it comes up, so that your next 28, 29 budgets have some capital funding already there and alleviate some of that downward pressure from that.
But it
from the
makes
capital
it
side.
less sure, in essence, because you're counting on whatever that unassigned budget's gonna be. Like, you can't say, you can say 16% to 17% goes to it. You don't know every year you'll have it.
Agreed.
Okay.
But I will also say that based on stormwater funding specifically,
Yeah.
it doesn't always hit the max. Right, so you're gonna
Sure,
have years where you may
Right.
have a tax that you haven't all
Used already.
used that
Yeah,
budget.
yeah. You
Or,
just-
and because of our intended growth and, Gateway and Dan had presented over the years what that anticipated growth is. And yes, we're gonna be needing more of that as we move forward. But that doesn't mean every year we're gonna hit it. Or
Right,
that project just may be delayed.
sure.
And you wouldn't want to then not be able to, or have a policy to say, you can direct money over here for stormwater that was intended as part of a said tax increase for those purposes. So things to think about and ponder as we move forward, so. Anything to add there, Ian?
One other thing that I'll add, and just, for the commission to keep in mind too is, I know that one of the asks from the commission was that since we had passed the ordinance to steadily increase the stormwater fund every year based on CPI rates, that, how could we potentially look at this for having a mechanism that would steadily increase? And I think the option here that does that probably is EIT, because that's probably the most closely tied with what CPI would be. Just my personal opinion, I would not recommend doing it all out of EIT just because of how close we are with a lot of our neighboring competitive communities. We don't necessarily want to be so much higher than them that we're incentivizing residents to move out of Mount Lebanon and move into, especially our higher earning residents. We don't want to incentivize them to
Right.
move elsewhere. So I think that if the commission wants to set up a structure that does kind of have that natural increase built in, that EIT does kind of naturally increase with CPI as wages increase.
How many
here.
people, is it like 26% of the population doesn't pay EIT because they're retired like me, and I don't pay EIT?
Right, there is a portion, I don't know the
Yeah,
exact
so it seems to
percentage,
me that, to be more fair, you want some of us to chip in too.
in which you are already chipping in, right, with the stormwater fee,
Yeah,
Right,
with the
so-
stormwater fee, we
right,
are, but I
right.
mean, it's,
so.
Can I steal the screen share for a minute?
Sure.
So, I like the idea of the
Mix,
dedicated fund.
yeah, I do too,
Um,
I do too.
Really, because, yeah, we could have a policy that says, you know, excess, yay, but a future commission can essentially do anything, but a dedicated fund is more, there's more hurdles to claw all those dollars away and to do something else with them. I would rather create more hurdles
Right.
to protect this, because honestly, the one thing I have heard, and I know Chief Daniels will confirm, is that as long as I've been at the fire department, all I've ever heard is how we used to go on so many storm calls
Yeah.
and pumping out basements
Yep.
year after year after
After
year
year.
after year, and
Yeah.
it has nearly gone away.
Yeah, and the damage is substantial from
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So how do we
Right.
sustain this funding, I think is,
Mm-hmm.
for me, far the most critical thing we can be doing. This goes before almost anything else. But how do we balance, right, that growth pattern in a way that's gonna be sustainable and also equitable? And thank you for the spreadsheet, that made it so much easier for me. I was playing with how would you distribute it in a way that, again, we can, create some distribution across them, but also build in some capacity for growth that, again, we're not gonna know. But at least gives us some
Idea.
some anticipation of growth over time.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of my question.
And these, so the spreadsheet that Commissioner Flynn mentioned, I emailed out to the commission, it's
Right.
what we're showing on the screen here. Basically, if you change the yellow cells to whatever numbers you want, then you can kind of see how the numbers change a little bit. These were the numbers that Andrew Curry had put in his initial memo of like a potential for a 0.05% increase to EIT and then a 0.56 increase to millage that would kind of balance out to get you close to what that funding gap was. The other analysis that I ran on this sheet, which if you play around, it'll automatically update on the second page. So not only is our median assessed value that 191,600 that Andrew mentioned, but our median household income's 124,000 essentially. So right now, your average, homeowner would be paying about $153 in a year for stormwater bill. And then with those proposed numbers for an increase, it would go up by about $15.50 to $169. So if the commission wants to play around with that and just see how it kind of, now obviously these are averages, these are medians, all that.
Sure.
But kind of how it impacts the median homeowner in our community, that's on the second page. The formulas are all built in, so you can kind of play around with those numbers.
All right, well, and this is interesting, Ian, because I've got a scenario up here that zeroes out the funding gap, so does better than you, right? No, this isn't a competition, it's just an observation.
Competitive spreadsheets.
Yeah, I literally, I just saw it as he was showing it. My average new total tax bill was $9,990. I don't know why, right? It comes out better.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, do
yeah,
you mind sharing what your numbers are?
yeah.
I'm just curious, I can plug them in.
So the real estate tax was 0.5, and then just do a goal seek on the funding gap and change.
Okay.
It's 0.4 something, 0.00, 0.04323 do a goal seek. 4.3. Yeah, that's close.
We'll figure it out. Okay, somewhere around there. Okay, yeah, but those are kind of the rough numbers that we were looking at too. So, whatever, direction the commission wants to pursue, obviously the municipal manager is gonna need to know for when he puts together his recommended budget as well, so. There obviously will be many further discussions as we get into budget time too.
And if people like it, it will be all of your ideas. If they hate it, it will be mine.
That's exactly the winning formula.
But the sooner, so I will just throw a caveat,
Yeah.
if we're gonna touch EIT,
You have to do it earlier.
we need to make sure we're committed to that early. Because to really get the word out and get that money in, we're gonna need to make sure we notify all the TCCs.
Yes, because it gets.
All the
taken out of there.
employers, there's a
Sure.
lot more to
Yeah.
that than there is
Sure.
real estate tax.
Got it.
And we don't want, PIO is gonna need to be involved, there's gonna be a whole litany
Okay,
that if you wanna have that discussion before budget, to say, hey, that's pretty much what, so people are at least on
yeah, I'm okay with
their
that.
ears to say, hey, this could be coming. Because I can tell you that when Whitehall increased theirs, it took 3 pays before I was notified as the payroll provider.
Oh, okay.
An employee called me and goes, my tax is not right. I was like, what are you talking about? They never notified me.
Yeah.
So either it's late to, so on and so forth, and people need to tell their employers that, hey, Mount Lebanon's increased, the tax
Yeah.
increase. And this is worldwide, or
Yeah,
nationwide. Because
Yeah.
we've got payroll companies all over the country that are providing Mount Lebanon tax. So the earlier we can do it, the better.
Yeah, I think we should make a decision fairly soon. I mean, I think we have to.
Would be helpful.
No.
Well, and I think with the EIT, right, this is a one-time decision, where with millage, right, there are other factors
Yeah.
that need to be considered.
Right.
So I think if we're gonna do something with the EIT, we just need to pick a number and
Plug is-
know that there's a delta that needs to be addressed.
The other piece of keeping it as a dedicated fund
Yeah.
means you can continue the practice that we put in place when we started this.
Yeah.
Which is to provide an annual report that
On what we're
shows the
doing.
expenditure of those funds, so people
Yeah.
can see
Right.
where those monies are being spent.
But I think one of the biggest complaints that people have about government in general is, things like Social Security being rated, trust funds being rated to pay for government stuff. I like dedicated funds. It's only fair.
We will reconvene in commission chambers.
Fabulous.